Welcome to Mormon Land, where we explore news in and about the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I'm senior religion reporter Peggy Fletcher-Stack. Joining me is senior managing editor David Noyce, who oversees our faith coverage. Hi, Dave.
Hello, Peggy.
Before we start, we remind you about another way to support Mormon Land. Just go to patreon.com, where with a donation as small as $3 a month, you can access transcripts to our podcasts, our complete newsletter, and all of our religion coverage. Again, that's Patreon, patreon.com/Mormonland. And if you haven't already, follow us on Instagram at mormon.land. Now for today's episode. Claudia Bushman was 40, a mother of 6, and working on an advanced history degree when she became the first editor-in-chief of Exponent II, an independent feminist magazine for Latter-day Saint women. That was 1974. Rachel Rueckert, a 30-something novelist, career woman, and the magazine's current top editor, wasn't even born then. Despite the age difference, the two share an important passion: giving voice to women in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. As the magazine celebrates its 50th anniversary, Bushman and Rueckert are here virtually to discuss their feelings about the magazine, how it has changed over the decades, what it has accomplished, their roles in it, and why they believe it remains relevant and crucial. Rachel and Claudia, welcome.
Hello, thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Claudia, let's start with you, Claudia. Can you tell us a little bit about the creation of Exponent II and what that group was like? Were they all mothers?
No, they weren't all mothers. We had two very active people who were single at the time, Judy Dushku, who was Rasmussen then, and who was the other one? Come on. You know, I have these problems. I fail in many directions. Anyway, we had another. There were two of them that were very active and were graduate students and single at the time. So it was just kind of a mixture. And we were really very informal for quite a while. We just would maybe say once a month and just talk. And we didn't even serve refreshments. We did.
Good for you.
It was casual, not a serious business. And then and so we just kept doing that, and that was fine. We really enjoyed it. Laurel Ulrich was part of the original group, except that she had already moved to New Hampshire, so she was phoning in and coming down sometimes, and you know, it was just sort of an informal group, and we just got together and talked. But after a while, I started to think and said, why don't we do projects? We should do projects. I'm a project person. And so we started doing projects of various kinds. And that was very satisfying for us. We had quite a series of very nice dinners that we sold tickets to for people to come and hear a speech by somebody that we imported and paid transportation with this food money. You know, we did things like that. It was fun.
Well, how'd you come up with the name for Exponent II?
Well, we always knew about Exponent because, of course, I'm married to a historian, so he knew that the women in the early church had published a newspaper. And after a while, as a matter of fact, my brother-in-law, Barnard Silver, who collects historic documents from the church and so on, bought a whole run of Exponent II, of the Woman's Exponent, and gave it to us to not to own, but to refer to. However, we were always so busy doing things that we hardly ever even looked at it, which is a very stupid thing, but that was the truth. So,
how did you get to be the editor?
Well, there was, well, we actually had, we were running a whole series of projects, which we did, and I ran most of them, but I was a graduate student. I was in a doctoral program at the time, and I had all these children and a few other things I had to do, my regular church work and so on. And so we had somebody else that was going to do this. She had actually had newspaper experience. She'd been a reporter one summer for a newspaper in Alaska or someplace like that. So we thought she could edit a newspaper. And but then but she was also president of the Relief Society. And so she just didn't, and had a new baby. So she didn't think she could do all of this. So she went to the bishop and asked to be released as president of the Relief Society. He said, absolutely not. You're not getting out of it. So,
so you just had 6 children.
No, I'm used to that. But anyway, so she reported this at one of the meetings we had, and Carol Sheldon, who is really our most serious runner and mover of all kinds of things, turned to me and said, well, you'll just have to do it. And I said, oh, can't we wait until I at least finish the book? Because we had done this series of lectures, we had dinners, we had, anyway, we were publishing all these lectures, which we had written up as essays in the book Mormon Sisters. And I was still in the process of editing that and so on. And I said, can't we wait till we finish with the book? He said, no, we're starting right now. So we did. That's just how we did things.
So Rachel, let me bring you into this. When did you first become aware of Exponent II, and how did you find it?
I had the privilege of living in Cambridge, which is where obviously Exponent II began. And so there's a little bit more awareness about it. So in 2015, I was invited to attend my first Exponent retreat. There's an annual retreat by my best friend who had attended the year before and would just kind of talk about how amazing it was. And sure enough, it lived up to all the hype. There I was among generations of women, and I had this distinct feeling of I'm not the only one, or I'm not alone. And this really beautiful, peaceful feeling of almost a coming home. There was something deeply spiritual, actually, for me about finding Exponent. And at that retreat, I learned that they had a magazine. And I remember there was a volunteer sign-up sheet on the wall, and I bravely went and put my name on it because I've always been interested in writing. And fast forward to 2024, I'm now the editor-in-chief of that magazine. And my best friend, Carol Ann Litster-Young, was the one who invited me to that first retreat as my managing editor. But that's how things at Exponent kind of happen. I know Claudia and Richard, they talk a lot about association. And in the book, 50 Years of Exponent II, this incredible book coming out with Signature this fall, I learned that people like Laurel Thatcher Ulrich got her copy of The Feminist Mistake from her ward organist. Things like this. It's really only in hindsight that you kind of see how things connect, but friendship is so much at the foundation of Exponent II.
Right.
Well, how does it feel to be editor-in-chief of this kind of legacy publication?
It feels very much happenstance. I happen to be the 9th editor, but I could have begun that story about me in Exponent II. I could have just said, once upon a time, there was a woman who found out about it through a friend, felt intimidated, didn't know her place, and is suddenly signed up for things and doing things. Like, that's almost everyone's story. I feel deeply honored, but also very humble. And I think one of the things about Exponent is, to Claudia's point earlier, it's such a project and there's so many people involved that it definitely doesn't feel like the Rachel show in any way. I'm grateful for that.
When you hear Claudia talking about juggling so many different things, does that kind of feel the same for you, just with different things that you might be juggling?
Yeah, I mean, even just this week, I am currently in North Carolina working on a family history project for a friend. I have recently started leatherworking to sell book holsters, and I've also just turned in my second novel manuscript. So there's a lot of things in the fire. Definitely don't want to compare that to anything Claudia was doing at that time, but we keep things busy at Exponent, and it's been a real just joy in my life, though.
So both of you, although Claudia said you women didn't really read the women's Exponent, but what was it about the pioneer women that you hope to emulate in this new publication? Well, Claudia, you can start, but Rachel, weigh into what was it about those women that you found admirable?
Well, it wasn't that we started with the women. We started with the idea because I came home from something that we had done and talked to my husband. I said, well, we just had another blockbuster because everything we do turns to gold. We did this. We really did a lot of good projects, and they really were very successful. And I said, I just don't know what we can do now. He said, start a newspaper. And I said, a newspaper was a totally new idea to me. I hadn't read the Women's Exponent, though. It was there and possible. I could have read it. Harvard has a complete run of it, and Boston Public Library does. But anyway, I didn't. I mean, when I was writing this stuff, I was writing about us and our times, and, the history was not the most important thing. So that's how it happened, accidentally. So it was a historical thing that happened without real historical antecedents. So,
but are there aspects of those pioneer women, now all about them, are there aspects of them that you see still playing out in
yes,
modern women today?
Absolutely. We're just the same. And, we say those poor pioneer women, all the things they put up with, but it was just regular life. And, we do just regular life, and we manage it, and it's fine. And of course, it's wonderful to have a tradition, to feel that you're following in some way. So that was important. But we didn't really identify with them as much as we might have. We were still our young wives and young mothers, and but it was a social thing as much as anything else. Was we really just needed some things to do besides the life we were living as mothers and wives. We needed to be doing things, and the newspaper was just wonderful for that because people took specific jobs. Carol Sheldon just kept us going. I mean, at one point, let's see, did that work? We had done this. We did this class. We did a series of lectures. We had all our women organized, and we took different topics and we researched them and prepared our presentations, and we presented those as a class for the Institute, which was really a very good thing. And then when that was done, then I had to take all these things and make people rewrite them and turn those into essays. And we published that as our book, Mormon Sisters. And another example of what we did at that time was that we sent it out to various people who sent it back with no comment. Our wonderful book. So we published it ourselves. But of course, we had no money. We were poor housewives. So Carol Sheldon arranged for us to take out a limited loan for $1,000 a piece for $12,000, which we published our own book. So we just did things. It was great. It was a great time.
Yeah, just
Rachel, is there anything that any of those pioneer women aspects that you relate to?
Yeah, I found out about the Women's Exponent after finding Exponent II, but it's definitely one of my life dreams to write a historical novel about Emmeline B. Wells. I think she's incredibly interesting, and it's been one of the deepest honors of my life to have personally known some of the founders of Exponent II, and I can only imagine that's how I would feel about many of them. Without over romanticizing and knowing like there was some real, things were tough in a lot of ways, and times have changed. But I will say one of the things, Claudia mentioned too about that socialness that I really admire about the Women's Exponent is they did a really good job of holding space and celebrating others. And it felt, it was very everydayness in that celebration. And even in our newsletter today for Exponent, we have a section at the end. It's like, call out people who are doing the things, who have published something, and not being too shy about that. So I really admire that about them.
Let me ask you a question of both of you. And Rachel, maybe you can start, and Claudia, you can follow. Rachel, who do you see as your audience now? And Claudia, who was your audience back then?
Yeah. Oh, that's an interesting ordering. I'll go first. And then, yeah.
It is. It is.
Yeah. I think one of the greatest things about Exponent is that the pillars of Mormonism and feminism, the very ones that Claudia first wrote in her editorial, are still as needed and true as ever. And so anyone who identifies in kind of that dual, like DUAL and DUEL, like both kind of play, and that definitely shows up in Katie Ludlow-Rich and Heather Sundall's book that's coming out with Signature this fall. But anyone who kind of identifies as an oxymoron, an oxymormon, if you will, of Mormonism and feminism, and is grappling with that, I think there's always going to be that audience. I think that's our readers, and I think that's also our contributors. I will say one of my goals and hopes as an editor right now is that I feel like a lot more people should know about Exponent II. It's 50 years old, and I think too much. It's been only known in sort of like the Northeast of the United States. And so it's one of my hopes that people can just, anyone who finds themselves on that spectrum, it's been doing incredible work for a really long time, and I hope for many more years to come. So
Claudia, who did you see as your audience back then?
Myself. I was writing for me. What did we want? This is the kind of thing I wanted. So, and our group, that was, so we wrote it for them. The people we knew, the sisters we knew at church, just everybody, but ourselves.
So talk about that. Like, what was the mood in the country in the 70s about feminism? And did you use the F word, feminism?
Yes, it was a bad thing. But on the other hand, what is it? I mean, women are important, and you can be a feminist without being offensive, I think. So that's what we just did. I thought we just be taken seriously. That's all.
What about the Equal Rights Amendment? Did Exponent II weigh in on the Equal Rights Amendment?
I can't even remember, but we would have been in favor of it, of course. But has it made a big difference? Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah. Katie and Heather's book dives into that as well. And it's all just so fascinating. It's a total page turner to me.
Claudia, did you get any pushback from church leaders about your involvement with Exponent II?
Yes, I did. But mostly it was because of my husband's position, because he was a bishop in the singles board for part of the time. And then he became stake president, was in the stake presidency, then became stake president, and so on. And, but the people at that point never said, don't do this. They said, be careful. Be very careful what you do. And I think we were careful, but I think we probably stepped on a few toes, but not too much. I mean, we really were very careful. But as I say, I was writing for myself. I was not trying to reform anybody. I was just writing about opportunities and advantages and things for women instead of demanding other things. So, which I think is the only way we should approach these things anyway.
So Claudia, that spurs a question that I had, and you may not be able to answer this because you might not be able to recall for sure, but was there anything back then you were afraid to publish then that you would publish willingly today?
Well, there's one piece that does particularly call that to mind. And that was a piece that Carol Sheldon, whom I've mentioned before, wrote about reforming the garment design. And I can't even remember what she had to say. It was certainly perfectly reasonable, not interfering with any kind of important stuff, but, a little easier to get on and off in certain circumstances. Anyway, but we didn't publish it. I can't even remember. She had written that. It was there. We were supposed to consider it every issue, but we never published it. And I would really like to see it now.
Was it back in the day? I can't remember when were garments made into two-piece garments?
Oh, I can't even remember those.
Was she talking about one-piece garments?
Yeah, we were still probably in one pieces and so on. But anyway, it was that was a thing that scared me a little, that we really couldn't. I mean, I did not want to offend anybody, because I think you think you can fight the war, but you cannot do it. You can only do what you do. And then you become so far out that they close you down. So,
Rachel, you wouldn't have any hesitancy about that topic, and you don't have any hesitancy necessarily about that topic now, right?
It really depends. I am just in charge of the magazine. Exponent has 3 pillars. There's the retreat, the blog, and also, me in magazine land. I am pretty careful about things with temple language, and garments. Definitely, that is something that everyone is talking about this year. But I will say, it's not even so much about censorship or bans on certain topics so much as it is very important to me, and this is important throughout. I think the reason why Exponent has lasted 50 years is this groundedness in personal stories and personal narrative, rather than kind of that advocacy role. I really try to publish a spectrum of experiences, from people who are, at the farthest, kind of fringes of faith or not, people in the middle, just making sure to have a balance. And sometimes those experiences are contradictory, but I think the work of the magazine is that it's an exercise in deep listening. And that's actually a rare, beautiful thing, especially in a political climate like we have right now, for Exponent to be engaging in that, to really sit with someone's experience and their story, rather than having an agenda. But, every time we do a subscription drive, we get comments back of, oh, you're all too conservative. You're not taking on the rebellion. And we also get comments of like, you're way too edgy now. Can't do it. So as long as we're still getting those kind of comments, I think maybe we're still succeeding.
Yeah. Welcome to our world. Right. Of course, the church itself is much more open about many things like temple garments, so that has changed. Yeah.
So I guess to both of you, well, let's start with you, Rachel. Would you say the bulk of your readers are women who maintain a connection to the church, whether they're, quote, active or just a connection? Are those mostly your readers?
Yeah, I would say almost 100% of people who are our readers have some connection to the church, whether or not they have stopped attending decades prior or not. I do think it's, like things in this country have gone. I think things have swung more left generally, but at any given retreat or in a standard magazine issue, I'd say, half are maybe actively attending, and the others are on the edges of the spectrum. But, you've got Relief Society presidents hanging out with, hardcore, definitely not believing anything folks. But again, it's that ability to share their experiences in thoughtful, artistic, and nuanced ways, and to give space for that, and to learn to listen with that in an atmosphere of trust.
So back in the day, Claudia, were most of the writers and editors still pretty involved in the church?
Well, I'd say so. Involved in fighting, if nothing else. But yeah, that's what it was. It was a church publication by church people, for church people, pretty much, but not official.
Okay, so tell me some things, both of you, let's start with you, Claudia. What are some of the things you're most proud of in Exponent?
Well, that we started such a thing, that we carried it on, that we made it pay, that we made friends, that we reach new audiences, all kinds of things. We were really proud of everything that we did until, of course, the day came. Well, of course, it lasted a lot longer than I did. I got fired after a while. But
What? Tell us about that.
I was, I was told I had to, that it just was not suitable for the wife of the bishop and the stake president to be involved in this kind of a thing. And I could have fought that, but there's no point in fighting that kind of a thing because then it just goes on, and then you make the wrong points. Anyway, so after
Wait, who fired you? You just stepped down, you mean?
I just quit.
It's a long, this is captured so well.
It's in the book, Rachel.
This is the tease. You really got to read the book. It's a great story. Claudia's pretty cool. Yeah.
Anyway,
so you're continue on the things you're proud of.
Well, and I'm really proud it's still going. That's wonderful. That is really incredible. We'll outdo the improvement era before long. That kind of thing. So, and then I'm also particularly proud of the way that women were able to work together on a project, which is what we did. And we had done that on many other projects, and we did an issue of dialogue. We did various other things. And I really love it when women can work together. And we used to work together that way in the Belief Society too, but we don't anymore. Just too bad. We just don't do women's projects in the church now, it's too bad.
And what about you, Rachel? What are you most proud of?
Like Claudia, I am so proud to be part of something that's been going for 50 years despite the odds. And there have been plenty of moments where it could have folded, and it didn't. And I think that's remarkable. There's something truly remarkable about Exponent. And the more I dig into the history, the more there's just something very special there. I'm proud of that deep listening we just talked about. I love the art. Margaret Olson Hemming and Paige Turner and a lot of folks behind the scenes have done a lot to bring a lot of rigor and beauty to the printed product. And I love that it's a place for all kinds of writers. It's often a first publication for folks. And, we do launch parties, we do writing workshops to really just empower people to know that their voices and stories matter. And I wouldn't say this last one is so much a point of pride, so much as it's just like a wondering. It is the case that Exponent no longer has the tagline Mormon women's voices. When we talk about gender issues in Mormonism, obviously there's still a lot going on. We had, that church Instagram post in March that blew up. There's a lot to talk about, but when we're talking about gender, I think opening up beyond women to genderqueer folks and our non-binary and trans siblings is something that Exponent is seeking to do more deliberately and consciously. And I've really valued working with those voices in the magazine of late.
Mm-hmm. That's what it is. The voices. It's that the women speak. That's it.
I personally thought that years ago, it's between you two, but when I kind of first started the Tribune, there was a special issue on abortion, which can be a very obviously complicated, difficult situation or topic. And again, the way Exponent II handled it was by talking to women about their experiences with that topic, being pregnant, miscarriages, abortion decisions. It was handled very delicately, but very personally. I think I even wrote about it in the Salt Lake Tribune.
Yeah, that's Exponent. Deep, personal, and again, that deep listening of. It's hard to shoot down someone's personal experience. It's very easy to shoot down an idea.
Yeah, it's kind of a model we followed when we, when there have been, when Roe v. Wade was overturned, we kind of followed that same model. We do. There's always power in personal story, of course. Well, I'm going to have a final question for you, and it may be difficult to answer, and some of us certainly probably won't be around. But in 100th anniversary for Exponent II, what kind of topics are you hoping to see within its pages? What story subjects would you like to see? Rachel, I'll start with you since you're the most likely to still be around.
I'm like, I want to hear what Claudia has to say.
Okay, well, we can start with Claudia.
Yeah,
That's fine.
Claudia.
Oh, am I going to do it?
Yeah, go ahead, Claudia.
I expect it'll be very much the same. We'll tell women's stories. It'll be women's interactions, be women's issues. I mean, I think those issues will continue. As long as the genders are as divided as they are, there will be many specific things that women are concerned with that others are not. And those are the things that we should deal with, or that they should deal with. I don't expect to be around. You know.
Do you think women will have the priesthood?
Well, all right, now I'll say something terrible, but I think women do have the priesthood. I consider I have the priesthood. I just pull it out of the air and I use it. So there it is.
Rachel, go ahead. What do you think?
I very much agree with Claudia. I think that as long as we have gender issues, there's going to be that dueling, DUAL and DUEL between Mormonism and feminism. But, our gender issues are so much bigger than just women too. Like we've got some things, but even if they were magically solved, like just magically solved in 50 years, I would still be excited to read what Exponent II is writing about because it talks about personal stories. And I want to read and learn from people's personal stories. And I hope they're writing about things that as of today, we don't know are insensitive or archaic or totally wrong about gender. And yeah, I'm here to learn about the ways that we've been wrong and to keep growing.
Claudia Bushman and Rachel Rueckert, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for this invitation. It's been lots of fun.
I will always party with Claudia. So good to be here.
And thanks to Dave Noyce.
Always a pleasure.
And to our producer, Nicole Weaver. We remind our listeners that they can keep up on all the happenings in and about the church by subscribing to the Salt Lake Tribune's free Mormon Land newsletter. Just go to sltrib.com to sign up. We'll talk again next time on Mormon Land.